All right, an election call is coming on Sunday, a federal election call, I should say. Are you decided? Who do you like, if any of the candidates? Mark Carney, Pierre Poilievre, Jagmeet Singh, or none of the above? Why have the Liberals surged in the polls? And according to almost every poll, if not every poll, that you look at, including the CBC poll tracker, which calculates all of the polls and comes up with some methodology, but it suggests that the Liberals are in majority territory. Whether or not you believe that, that is, I guess, up to you. But I think that when all the polls are saying the same thing, there's something to it. That's my take on it anyway. So what are your thoughts on why the Liberals have surged in the polls? And perhaps you are skeptical of what polls indicate. Are attacks against Carney, and you've heard them, he's a globalist, World Economic Forum guy, environmentalist, sneaky advisor to Trudeau, wealthy, something to hide. Are these legitimate concerns of yours? Just another elite liberal? Or are they dismissed? Conversely, the attacks against Pierre Poilievre, basically calling him Trump North. That's kind of the one that they're trying to make stick the most, is that he's just like Donald Trump. A one-trick pony, attack dog, never had a real job outside of the public sector, spent his life in politics, doesn't understand how the real world works. Are these concerns legitimate or not? Which of the two is better suited to handle Donald Trump? And where do you get your news? That's something else that I want to find out about what your thoughts are. How do you consume news? Do you watch nightly news? Do you read newspapers? Do you read websites? Do you get your news through podcasts, social media? Where do you consume your news and information, and how do you what do you trust when it comes to information? Some questions that I'd like you to think about. Also, this story: Nova Scotia Finance Minister, I saw this on the CBC website this morning. John Laura will soon be apartment hunting, joining other members of the Ledge who bill taxpayers for apartments. As part of a change to the House of Assembly Act, the Speaker, 2 cabinet ministers, including Laura, and at least 2 PC backbenchers will be eligible for housing allowance, which is already used by 25 of the 55 MLAs in the House. Under the existing rules, representatives who live at least 100 kilometers from Province House, known as outside members, are eligible for the allowance. Now that distance is being amended to 50 kilometers away. So if you live just 50 kilometers away or more, you get an apartment in Halifax. Not a bad deal, I think, if you can get it. I don't think it's necessary, though. I really don't. They get a car allowance, they get mileage or whatever they get. I don't think taxpayers should be footing the bill for apartments for MLAs who live less than somewhere within the vicinity of 50 to 100 kilometers away. Now, 100 or more, I guess that's worthy of a conversation. That's a lot of driving. But 50, no, I think that's wrong. Anyway, just something else you can talk about. Also, a new poll suggests Canadians are feeling increasingly alarmed by U.S. tariffs, President Donald Trump, and American economic aggression. The Leger poll, which sampled more than 1,500 Canadian adults from March 14th to March 16th, suggests 41% of respondents see those 3 factors as the most pressing threats facing Canada today, a 13-point spike since the March 3rd survey. Are you feeling increasingly alarmed by U.S. tariffs and President Donald Trump and American economic aggression? And do you believe that the president means business when he says that he wants to make this the 51st state? Something else that you can talk about, or anything else you'd like to get into when we open the phone lines in about an hour's time. Thanks so much for listening, everybody, and thanks to Vanessa Van Ness as well. As always, on the other side of the glass, doing a fine job, as always. All right, let's dive right in. Sean Kirby joins us with the Mining Association of Nova Scotia. Sean, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Good morning, Todd. Thank you.
All right, so some environmental advocates have told the Nova Scotia Legislature Committee a government bill that would lift existing uranium mining and fracking bans is dangerous and should be scrapped. The Premier said the changes are needed to make the province more self-reliant and better able to withstand economic challenges stemming from U.S. tariffs. Madeline Conacher of Sustainable Northern Nova Scotia says she's concerned the province seems to be fast-tracking these risky endeavors without consulting residents and Mi'kmaq communities. Obviously, you are I support these changes. I'm safe to say. Let's just get that on the record, right?
We certainly do. Yeah, we're very grateful to the provincial government for finally lifting a ban on uranium that really was never based in science, which has hurt our industry and the province's economy. And really, uranium is so important these days, in particular in context of trying to achieve global climate goals, that we believe lifting the ban is absolutely essential.
Okay, so you've heard all the concerns from the environmentalists, including a doctor who I had on the show yesterday who suggests that detrimental health concerns when it comes to people working in the industry, when it comes to water and all these other issues. What's your response to health concerns here and environmental concerns?
So look, unfortunately, there are many misconceptions about uranium, and really I think they're just rooted in, the distant past generations of uranium mining, in which we can agree that uranium mining was not done as safely and appropriately as it should have been. Frankly, that would be the case with most industries in the distant past. But the reality is that modern uranium mining is a safe, environmentally responsible activity that is essential to achieving climate goals because it is the key nuclear fuel, and experts around the world agree that we need to triple nuclear power generation in order to achieve climate goals like net zero. So there really is no health, safety, or environmental reason to ban uranium. We have, unfortunately, in this province had a ban on it for almost a half century. And really, that was never rooted in science. That was never based in anything other than myths and misconceptions. And it's hurt our industry. It's made it harder for us to create jobs for Nova Scotians and contribute to government revenues that help pay for things like health and education. So we really think it's terrific that the provincial government is repealing the ban. And what that will allow us to do is to do the uranium exploration that really was cut short in 1981 when a uranium moratorium was first brought in. It will allow us to see whether, in fact, Nova Scotia does have economically viable deposits of uranium and whether we can create jobs for Nova Scotians and contribute to global supply as part of the effort to achieve global climate goals. So yeah, repealing the ban is really important. It really is unfortunate that there are so many myths and misconceptions about uranium. Experts like the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, which is the federal regulator of all uranium mines in Canada, says that modern uranium mining is safe and environmentally responsible. It does not cause the problems that are so frequently alleged about it. And so I think we really need to be making decisions based on science and facts and not myths and misconceptions. And the provincial government is doing that, and we applaud them for it.
All right, so you say that it's safe and that there are a lot of myths and misconceptions and disinformation. How do people know what's disinformation and what's myth? Because according to the guests who I had on the show yesterday and lots of emails that I've received, they cite all types of studies and information which would suggest otherwise. How do people discern what's true and what isn't, and what's good information and what isn't in this era of the web?
Well, I think really one of the best sources of information is the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. They're a government agency, not industry. They're science-based, they're objective and independent, and they in fact have a page on their website which is called Mythbusters, which addresses the concerns and misconceptions about uranium. And it's very clear from reading it that the CNSC says unequivocally over and over in different ways that modern uranium mining is safe and environmentally responsible. It just doesn't cause the issues that are alleged about it. I think we can also in this country look at Saskatchewan, because Saskatchewan has actually been one of the top global suppliers of uranium going back 7 decades, all the way to the 1950s. And if uranium mining caused the sorts of problems that are sometimes alleged about it, the people of Saskatchewan would tell us so. And instead, polling shows that 83% of people in Saskatchewan support uranium mining. Uranium mining in Saskatchewan has bipartisan support. The two main political parties are the Saskatchewan Party and the NDP, and both of them support uranium mining. First Nations support uranium mining in Saskatchewan. There was an opinion piece just last weekend in the newspaper from a chief in Saskatchewan calling for a new uranium mine to be approved by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission right away because the chief said explicitly that uranium mining is safe and environmentally responsible. And so what's clear when you start to look at the facts is that the people who are actually most familiar with uranium mining, who have direct experience with it, they all support it. They have seen that it is safe and environmentally responsible and does not cause the problems that people sometimes allege. And they understand that it is in fact essential in our modern world. I mean, it's so important these days in terms of trying to achieve climate goals because it is the key fuel for emissions-free nuclear power. But uranium also makes possible things like smoke detectors, which keep us safe in our daily lives. It makes possible countless medical procedures, such as radiation therapy treatments for cancer patients. So this is an incredibly important material in our daily lives. And if Nova Scotia has the potential to provide it and to contribute to global supply, that would be a terrific thing for us to do. And it would allow us to create jobs for Nova Scotians and more government revenues to help pay for programs like health and education.
All right, do robots do much to the actual mining for uranium in Saskatchewan? I'm told that that's the case. Somebody sent me some information that's the case. Is that true or no?
It's sort of true. I mean, the modern uranium mining is very different from what it used to be. And so the way most uranium is mined now is through something called solution mining, which basically means that you inject water underground and it dissolves the uranium in the water, bring the water back up to surface, and then you can extract the uranium from the water that way. And what's so incredibly clever about that is that it is very different from conventional mining. There's no waste rock that's generated. There's no need for tailings facilities. The concerns that people often raise about uranium mining, in fact, don't exist in the modern era because the method by which it is usually done is so different from how it was done in prior generations. And so it is remote mining. It is done, robots is maybe a word that conjures up different images, but it is done, with the miners separated behind glass and remotely from the actual sort of activity underground. And so it really is an extraordinary, sophisticated science and technology-based business now. And that's how, it is done safely and environmentally responsible. It is just incredibly sophisticated. So, yeah, it's very different, I think, from what people would probably expect, and very different from how it was done in the past when we agree that there were, health challenges with it. But because we have learned from the mistakes of the past, it is completely different today. And as the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, you asked about, health concerns. The CNSC says basically that the health risks to modern uranium miners are so small that they cannot be meaningfully measured. It is not at all what people sometimes claim about it. It is an extremely safe area of activity for the miners and for surrounding communities. It's environmentally responsible. It, with the solution mining, doesn't generate waste rock or tailings. It's just completely different from what people, in some cases assume. And so my, job and our job as an industry is just to try to provide factual information to people, to explain to them that it's so different from what they expect. And yeah, if people are interested, they should go to the Mythbusters page of the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission because they have a long list of myths there that they bust, that they address and explain that the things being alleged about uranium mining are simply not true. And the great thing is that in this country we don't need to say what if this, what if that. Saskatchewan has been doing this for 7 decades. They have shown us that it can be done safely and responsibly, and they support it because they know that this is a terrific area of activity that creates jobs and provides a really essential material in our daily lives. So let's look to Saskatchewan. Let's look to the experts at the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, the people, frankly, who know uranium mining the best and know that it is safe and environmentally responsible.
All right, the fact that Nova Scotia is a much smaller province than Saskatchewan and the proximity of the mines to population would be much closer. From what I'm reading, it's, I think, 600 kilometers in Saskatchewan from the nearest uranium mine to the nearest town. That certainly wouldn't be the case here. Is that cause for concern at all, or what's your response to those who suggest that it should be?
Well, the 600 kilometers isn't accurate. I mean, you have obviously a lot of miners who have to live in the area of the activity. But look, the real issue is that the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission makes very clear on that Mythbusters page on its website and other areas of its website that uranium mining is perfectly, responsible. It does not create safety risks for the surrounding communities. It does not create any significant health risks for the miners themselves. The CNSC says that the miners in Saskatchewan's uranium mining industry and people in the surrounding communities have basically the same health profile as the general population. In other words, uranium mining is not a factor at all in their health. There just is not the impacts that people are alleging. And so, and again, this is a very different type of mining than what people would ordinarily picture. It's really just, it's a factory industrial type facility that takes place completely underground and does not generate waste rock or tailings or anything like that when it's done through the modern methods. So it's just so different from what people expect. And that's part of our challenge, is just trying to provide people with the factual information so they can understand that it's just very different from what it was historically and what people probably assume it is at this point. It is safe and environmentally responsible, and all the experts who actually have direct knowledge of it and experience and expertise tell us that.
Okay, just quickly, we're almost out of time, but what's the time horizon when it comes to when uranium might be mined in Nova Scotia again?
So it's important to understand that we have been prevented for almost a half century from doing any uranium exploration, and the uranium exploration that was done in the late 70s and early 80s was really, nipped in the bud. Very little was done ultimately. And so the timelines in our industry are very long. It takes an average of 17 years globally to get from discovering a mineral deposit to actually mining it. So frankly, what's going to happen is that the uranium ban, it looks like, will be lifted, and Nova Scotians aren't going to notice anything. There will be years and years and years of exploration that takes place to see whether we in fact have economically viable deposits. Hopefully we do, but if Nova Scotia ever has a uranium mine, it will be many years down the road. There will be jobs created and investment attracted in the exploration of it, but the activity is not going to be apparent to people for many, many years, if ever. And so I really think the concerns, being raised in many cases simply aren't based on factual evidence and not based on science, but they're also just overblown because this is a long-term process in our industry to find economically viable deposits and get to the point where we can actually mine them and provide them to the world in order to support our modern society.
Okay, Sean, appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
All right, take care. Sean Kirby of the Mining Association of Nova Scotia. A Purple Day, what's it all about? We'll find out when we come back. All right, Purple Day is an international grassroots effort dedicated to increasing awareness about epilepsy worldwide. Joining me here in studio is Cassidy Megan. Cassidy, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me again.
All right, so it's been a year since we chatted. Hard to believe how time flies, eh?
I was actually looking on the calendar because I was like, it wasn't that long ago, was it? And I was like, back to last year. I'm like, no way, I had to put that in wrong.
Yeah, but it was.
It was.
Yeah. All right, tell us a bit about your journey, first of all, for those who don't know about your journey. I know you're probably fatigued with sharing it, but it's important.
It is important.
Yeah.
I was diagnosed when I was 7 and with epilepsy, and I didn't know anyone who had it. I told the doctor to take it back. I didn't want it.
Yeah.
And he said, well, you can't really do that, so you have it. We're just we're gonna learn to deal with it.
Yeah.
And they were really helpful in helping us try to find the right information. And then the local association of the Epilepsy Association of the Maritimes, they were really helpful in helping me speak out about it because I didn't even talk about my epilepsy to family members, let alone peers in the beginning because I was afraid of the bullying. I was afraid of all the stigmas and, the fear of the unknown.
Sure.
So when the association came in, did a presentation, and that seeing how my peers were responding, really interested in asking questions, it kind of helped give me that courage to tell them that I had epilepsy as well. Mm-hmm. And then from there it was finding others who had it, and then realizing that they all had the same fears, the same feelings.
Yeah.
And it sucks. You hate to feel alone, and you hate to feel isolated by something that's out of your control. That's just a health condition. Mm-hmm. So starting Purple Day, I wanted people to know that they didn't have to feel that way, that it's okay to talk about it. It's an okay condition to have. And it doesn't make you any different than any other health condition would. Mm-hmm.
Why Purple Day?
Lavender is the official color of epilepsy. Mm-hmm. And when I started Purple Day, I was 8.5, 9. So my theory was well, that's just a shade of purple. And now we call it a Purple Day. People can wear whatever shade they want. Yeah. And then it's kind of worked in a multitude of ways growing up, realizing that all the different shades of purple could represent the different seizure types or different places that epilepsy, all the places in the world that people are affected by epilepsy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so tell us about all the events and March 26th and all that you've got planned.
Oh, dear. This will probably not be in chronological order.
Oh, that's okay.
At all.
That's okay.
this weekend we have the annual Purple Day Gala here in Halifax at the Westin. And then, and then we will have the Purple Day flag raising at 9 a.m. on actual Purple Day, March 26th at City Hall.
Yeah.
And that evening, City Hall and Province House will be lit purple. We unfortunately won't be in Halifax to see those this year. We will be in PEI right from the flag raising, and doing events over there, talking with the Boys and Girls Club. We will be doing some teacher first aid sessions and visiting the political places out there.
So the gala itself, what's the what keynote speakers, or what do you have planned for that?
This year's every year at the gala we try to make it really immersive. So when you go there, it's a whole experience, and every year's different. Just kind of like living with epilepsy. Yeah. So this year's theme is Phantom of the Stigma, play on Phantom of the Opera without the copyrights.
Yeah. I'm sure they let it go.
I would hope so. So it's really it's Phantom of the Stigma, the truth behind the mask. So it's kind of we're encouraging masks for people, like masquerade. And then there's going to be a lot of different decor and stuff going on that'll help reveal the truths that the stigmas tried to hide from the public and public knowledge.
What are some of those truths?
That just because we have epilepsy, we can still go to schools, universities. We can still get good jobs. We can still be hardworking, dedicated employees. Epilepsy is medical. It's not possession. That, it doesn't make us any different, that we're not alone, and that it doesn't have to be a taboo subject. Right.
Yeah. And what's that like to make it, to meet people and for the first time in their lives, to be recognizing and realizing that they're not alone, that this is a shared experience with other people. That must be extremely rewarding for you. Probably why you do all this.
It is. Yeah. It's, helping people realize that they aren't alone and helping them really come into their own truth and embrace their epilepsy to an extent that they don't have to feel like they have to hide away. And it's super rewarding, but it's also super emotional because all these people have different backgrounds. All these people have different experiences. And they can be really emotional where they've come from, what they've been through, and to get to the point where they're at to be able to talk about it and to really open up and feel comfortable in their own skin.
Yeah. Wow. So is the gala sold out, or?
We still have a few. We still have a few tickets. Sorry, I had to look at Mom for confirmation.
Yeah, that's right. She gave a nod.
She got a phone call before the event. Was like, "Do you have the final numbers?" So, there is still a window to get tickets.
Okay. How do people get tickets if they're interested?
Yes, you can contact the Epilepsy Association of the Maritimes. You can buy them there. There's also the website Universe. You go on that and you type in Purple Day Gala, and there'll be the ticket site there. And that explains the event. There's pictures of last year's event on there too, to give you an idea of what to expect. Wow.
Amazing stuff. Thanks. Anything else before I let you go? That I want to make sure that you get all the information out there that you like.
Thank you for having me on here. And wear purple on March 26th. Learn about epilepsy, ask questions. A lot of people are afraid to ask questions because they don't want to offend. But what other way is there to learn? Yeah, if you're asking to learn and you're asking because you're curious and you want to know, then ask away.
Yeah. So if people want to reach out to you personally, can they get a hold of you?
Yeah. I'm on all social medias. It's either Cassidy Megan or Purple Day March 26th.
And I'm sure that you'd be a wealth of knowledge and a big help to people who are first diagnosed, especially young people, I suppose, eh?
I would like to think so. Yeah. I do my best, and if they have questions that I can't answer, I can definitely point them in the right direction of where to get the answers.
Excellent stuff. Okay, so fantastic, Cassidy. Congratulations on another great event, and the best of luck in it. I know it'll be a big success, and thanks for all the work that you do for the community.
Thank you for everything you do, having us on here and helping us get the word out.
All right, absolutely. Cassidy Megan, Purple Day, March 26th. Tim Powers when we come back. All right, joining us for a weekly chat is Tim Powers, Summa Strategies, Abacus Data, friend of the show. Tim Powers, what's going on, man?
I don't know, Todd. It's a quiet, lazy Friday. Shag all gonna happen this weekend. Your Leafs will probably find a way to lose.
Hey, the Leafs won 3 in a row, pal. How are your Islanders doing, by the way?
Oh, well, I'm off them now. I'm on the Senators bandwagon.
Oh, God. How did I know you're going to be
after
Senators?
They beat your Leafs last Saturday, but then they got smoked by Nova Scotia's Nathan McKinnon and Jonathan Drouin of the Mooseheads last night, 5-1. But they're still in the lead wild card place. And Todd, I gotta have something positive to cheer for, boy, because the rest of it is, not as enthusiastic an environment.
That's true. How did I know that you'd be a Senators fan? Though I was going to predict that. That's pathetic. I got to tell you, Tim.
Listen, I accept the abuse, but it's for my son. How about that? He's just growing.
Oh, there you go.
I'm doing it as a good dad. Is that a good diversion, or am I still pathetic? Okay.
No, that's not bad. I gotta let that one go. All right, so we've got a federal election coming on Sunday, and my oh my, there's probably some Liberal MPs who wish they didn't back out and wish they had a redo based on what the polling numbers look like. And what are your thoughts? Do you think that some of these MPs who said they're not running are regretting this, or what?
Some of them maybe, but you do get burned out in it all, and if you've been around and you've been through it all, and you do need a break, then you do need a break. It's not all just adrenaline and ambition. It does from time to time take a personal toll, but I'm sure there are a few who wish they had their hand up now, particularly in Atlantic Canada, because for me, and you and I have talked about this over the last few years, that's a big swing. I mean, late fall, the Conservatives were well ahead in Atlantic Canada, and looking like they were going to do well in my home province, do as well in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick as they did, or better under Stephen Harper in 2011. I mean, they may still, but right now it looks like we're reverting to our kind of traditional pattern in Atlantic Canada of favoring more Liberals over Conservatives.
Right. What's the biggest contributing factor as to what's happened here? Is it Donald Trump? Is it Mark Carney? Is it tariffs? What's going on here?
I think it's I describe it. It's not as much it's Justin Trudeau going, most certainly. Yeah. But look, if being home last week and the week before is any litmus test, and you must hear this when you're out and about too, all anybody can talk about is the anxiety, fear, the uncertainty they have about what Trump might mean to them and their lives. It reminds me of those COVID times when that was the only conversation that could happen. I heard it in locker rooms. I've heard it in grocery stores. I've heard it in restaurants. And as a consequence of that, it created an opening for somebody like Mark Carney, who is new as a would-be elected official to the stage, isn't, despite the Conservatives' best efforts, and maybe they will have success with this going forward, isn't as tied to the Trudeau government as others were, and so he's getting a look, and it's interesting, right? Old geezers like you and I in our 50s, though we're still kids, Todd, are really concerned, and that the showing up in polls. So are younger people, but a lot of the older cadre that were angry at Trudeau, that were angry at carbon pricing, and that being taken off the table, at least at the consumer level, are giving these guys a look, giving the Liberals a look.
It kind of amazes me though when you look at the cabinet posts and yesterday or last week, a week ago when Carney unveiled his new cabinet, and it's the same old faces, and Carney's acting like they're brand new people. It smacks a little bit of hypocrisy, Tim, when you think about these are the same people that told us the carbon tax was needed and necessary and suck it up, and all of a sudden they jettisoned it as fast as they could be to make way for votes. I don't know, hypocrisy or what's going on here?
Yeah, that's a fair. What is the number? 87% of Mark Carney's cabinet, and every member of that cabinet was elected under Justin Trudeau. So you can certainly make that charge, but it just doesn't seem to matter right now. Maybe it does. Right. Maybe it does when the election starts. Maybe Poilievre starts to get some traction on all of that. Because look, the Conservatives still need to make this about a Liberal government that's tired, seeking its fourth term, isn't going to be dramatically different. But so far, that worm is not being taken off the hook and for a swim.
Why? What's going on? Why do you think that is? Is it just fatigue
Trump.
or Trump? Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
I mean, he's everywhere, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
He's so omnipresent, and we've never, Todd, in our lifetimes, had such sense of threat, whether it is real, perceived, it's certainly perceived, but whether it's real or not from the U.S. And I think this has brought Canadians to a place to think about, all right, how are we going to deal with this, and do we have the right people at the table? And though we don't know much about this Mark Carney guy, because yes, you and I and the listeners to your show and my show, they know who he is because we talk about him, but most Canadians would know him super well. So that's also why he wants a short window, right, to take advantage of the generally positive response he's getting now, to go through this election campaign and hopefully take the momentum that he's taking out of the Liberal leadership race and win now. So that is their plan. But I don't know. I hope if the one thing I do hope for is that if this engagement continues, that if people are as fearful as I believe they are, or anxious, again, pick your word, that they do stick with it over the next number of weeks, that they do think long and hard about who they vote for, and they go vote. We could have a very high turnout given the national mood the country is in right now. Okay,
so the words that Poilievre has used, they're being used against him. Canada's broken. And then they're drawing the parallels to what Trump is saying, the back and forth. I think they're effective, rightfully or wrongfully. I think that has an impact on Canadians. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, right now they do, because, again, we're in this, just go back to the Four Nations a few weeks ago, right? The Canadians want to be as one as best they can. I mean, I can't think of a time when, maybe after 9/11, maybe during the early days of COVID, but so from, Newfoundland and Labrador up north through Quebec, let me say that again, everybody is on par, it seems, with, all right, Canada needs to be together. Canada's got to find its way to get through this and deal with the United States. We need to do it as one team. You've heard the former Prime Minister say that. You've heard your Premier say that in Nova Scotia. You've heard Doug Ford say it. And I think that, how long is that mood going to hold? This is going to be a tough, mean election, Todd. Let's not kid ourselves. I mean, you see some of the stuff that's going on in social media already. It's just, some of it is just gross. Trying to link Mark Carney to Jeffrey Epstein, some of the stuff that's been done about Mark Carney's daughter. I mean, God, people stop. It's vile. But that's we haven't even started, and this stuff's out there.
All right. So how does Pierre Poilievre pivot and refocus and re-image himself, or does he? I'm not sure what he can do to change the narrative here.
Well, I think he's got to reinforce himself with those young voters who he was doing so well with. I mean, there's different bits of data out there that still shows that the Gen Z and younger millennial voters, affordability and housing are still big for them. And Poilievre had a very good way of speaking with them and to them and hearing their concerns. So he's got to keep that front and center. I think he's got to co-opt the challenge of Trump and, do, I think, some of what he's been doing over the last couple of days, that announcement of LNG and Saguenay. I think Premier Houston has talked about LNG and bringing, You got to talk about that. But most everything has to be talked about in the light of, this is something Canada could do to protect us. This is something Canada could do to help you. If they keep on the track of, we're sticking it to the Liberals and we're sticking it to Justin Trudeau, which is what people wanted 3 months ago, I think that's going to have much less effect. So they have to move off of that a little bit, if not a lot, in certain parts of the country, and now make it about Pierre Poilievre. Yeah, you got to think twice about these guys. The Liberals' fourth term, do you want all of that? But here, I have more than slogans. I have things that will help Canadians.
Yeah, and the whole blind trust I don't think that's going anywhere. Obviously, if it's not got traction yet, it's not going to. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean that was all kind of the same stuff that happened. Remember when Paul Martin came forward, and Joe Clark had a great line about the Venetian blind trust that Mr. Martin could look into it. Those are 3 or 4 day news stories. Again, if the Conservatives can stay on it to a certain degree, but if at a time when Canadians seem to be looking at Mark Carney in part because they think he's got a good resume and he's got experience, and as a consequence of that has maybe accrued some personal benefit, I don't think that's going to be the winner they think it is.
Okay, Tim, always great, appreciate it, and for God's sakes, pick a team and stick with it, okay, please?
I'm sending you a Sens jersey and the game-winning puck from the Sens last week. Bye, buddy.
See you later, pal. Take care. Tim Powers Summa Strategies, Abacus Data, friend of the show. Mayor Pam Mood of Yarmouth visited the United States recently and came back with a message, "We are so sorry." That's what she heard time and time again. We'll be back. All right, Pam Mood is the mayor of Yarmouth, also president of the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, and joins me for a chat. Mayor Mood, thanks for joining the show.
My pleasure always, Todd.
All right, so you were recently in Washington as a part of a delegation, attended a conference of mayors and local officials from across the United States, and you heard the words, "We are so sorry," time and time again. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. Yes.
Wow.
It was. Yeah. It's hard to even put into words, but I don't think that anyone expects, regardless of which side you're on, politically, for your closest friend, ally, neighbor to be tariffed like that, to be attacked, to be, put upon. So I think it threw everyone backwards.
Were the apologies unsolicited, or were people just kind of apologetic and without being asked?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. No, we didn't. Yeah. The mandate was just to go over there as an awareness campaign. I know the premier's been there speaking to his counterparts, at the state level. And, we had 2,800 people in that conference, mayors and elected from all over the country. So we needed to be there to say, on the ground, do you understand the impacts of these tariffs? And they were kind of just grasping it because, a couple days before, I think the retaliatory tariffs had come into play. Mm-hmm. And they the sad faces, we are so sorry. I mean, not from everyone, but we got that. They would just come up to us after, a couple people just stood up in the sessions and said, we're so sorry. And Todd, the response was, we're sorry as well. You are our friends, allies, neighbors. It's going to affect you too. So it was wild.
All right. What about their level of knowledge about the tariffs and how everything's going to work and the impact? Do you feel as though that there was a good knowledge of how these things are going to work, or was there some people that were perhaps naive about all of this?
Yeah, I think a mixture of a lack of knowledge because, and fairly, at the local level, any level really, there's so many things to deal with. But at the local level, we're thinking, is a tariff something that my premier or my prime minister and their teams are going to take care of? But we're affected on the ground. That's where everyone's affected. That's where we're hit. So there was a little bit of a lack of awareness of what was going on. They knew tariff, didn't know exactly how that would play out. And then when we started to say, this is how it will affect us on the ground, that kind of hit home. So the message would be spread.
Unfortunately, though, how much of that sentiment gets sent back to where it should, and even if it did, how would it be received by the inner workings of Donald Trump and his cohorts?
Yeah, so that's the concern, right?
Yeah.
If you're talking about anyone else, I think we've seen our premier listen when more information was found on certain issues. The feds have certainly done that. But what happens in this case? Because we know who we're dealing with. But the important thing is that on the ground, they go to their state officials, and the state officials can do what they want with it. But hopefully they're having those conversations, and there's enough conversation for folks to understand, who gets impacted are the people that voted for you. So you need to speak up. And that was a difficult point as well, that fear of speaking up.
For sure. And from what I'm reading in the Herald here, you were at a talk given by J.D. Vance, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, the vice president was there. It was his first public speech since being elected. And that was a tough one. That was a tough one.
Why was it tough?
Well, it was because I guess I'm a bit of an idealist. So I went into that room not to hear him speak, but to gauge the crowd. And he would say something about housing, and I'd sit there and say, "Oh my gosh!" But you didn't say, the price of building these homes is going to go up because of tariffs. Like let's give them the truth. Like help people understand. But I mean, he can't do that because it's his administration. So. It was tough, and I could tangibly feel. I say the word fear, but I'm going to call it that. The fear in the room of speaking up, because what if I lose my funding? I mean, we've seen what happens if you cross this administration. So it was sad.
Yeah, but the problem is that when that's the sentiment and everybody's afraid to speak up, then nobody speaks up, right? And this is the challenge that we're dealing with. At some point, people just have to say hell with it and speak up and be heard.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. So we met with a lot of folks. We met with the embassy, of course, the Democratic Mayors Association. We met with the National Mayors Association as well, just mayors, and. It's getting that message to a place, I believe, to a place where everyone's on the same page, or most people are, and then you're kind of lifting that message up as a group, as opposed to being, pointed out as one entity. Like the power of doing this together. We always say, there's power in being together. Mm-hmm. Now's the time to use that over there.
All right. So, how effective are these types of delegations and trips? Do you think that they're important? Obviously, you went, but what are your thoughts on their effectiveness?
I think they're very effective. I think that you don't see everything on the outside. You're not going to see it in the news. You're not going to see the mayor of a big city step up and say, stop the tariffs. We're not going to see that because of what happens over there. But we are going to see, I believe, that undercurrent of people getting together, talking to each other, and then raising it up to that next level. And now what he does with it, because it's who he is again, another story. Mm-hmm. But how do you ignore completely the voices of the people? I mean, even the people that, as we say, speak Trump, that listen to every word he says. I mean, when they realize, oh my gosh, I'm being affected, how do they keep quiet? So there's hope.
How about locally? What are you hearing from your in your local community and around the province about concerns about all of this?
Yeah, I'm hearing some. The fisheries obviously have reached out, and we send a lot of fish out in every form, including lobster. So what happens there? Who eats it? So we're trying to figure those pieces out. Locally, as president of NSFM. We did a survey to ask the members, how are you going to be affected? Because we want to know, you have to look into that, because those costs get passed on to our local folks. So everything from infrastructure development to affordable housing projects, everything. It's everything touches us.
Pam, appreciate your time as always. Thanks so much, and we'll talk again soon.
Sounds good, Todd.
All right, take care. Yarmouth Mayor Pam Mood. Now it's time for you. What is on your mind today on this Friday? The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Give us a call. Again, 902-405-6000. Election call is coming on Sunday. The election will be sometime towards the end of April, early May. We're not quite sure yet. Are you decided? Who do you like? Who do you not like? And what about polls? Do you believe in what the polls are telling us? Also, anything else you want to get into? 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Your calls when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, taking your calls. The way to reach us, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. What would you like to get into today? Perhaps some of you want to talk about the federal election, which will be called on Sunday, and it'll be held sometime the end of April, early May. Are you decided? Who do you like, if any? Carney, Poilievre, Singh, or none of the above, or all of the above? I don't think there's probably any all of the above there, but maybe none of the above. Why have the Liberals surged in the polls? What is going on here? What has been the factors that have led to the surge in the Liberal polling? Are attacks against Carney, he's a globalist, he's a World Economic Forum guy, environmentalist, sneaky, advisor to Trudeau, wealthy, are they legitimate concerns? Do you have concerns about Mark Carney? Or do you think that Mark Carney is the right guy to guide us through troubled times? With the pedigree of being an economist and a renowned economist, of course, with a vast experience, including Governor of the Bank of Canada, Governor of Bank of England, and other private experience. What are your thoughts on that? What about Pierre Poilievre? Is he the guy? Do you like his common sense approach, as he likes to put it? Do you like his cut of his jib, if you will? Or is he too Trump North, one-trick pony, attack dog? Are those legitimate concerns? What are your thoughts on all of that? Which is better handled? Who is better handled to deal with Donald Trump, do you think? To me, this is probably the ballot box question that really I think is the most important, is who can handle Donald Trump? Who do you think is best equipped to deal with that guy? And where do you get your news? Do you get your news through the nightly news, through newscasts, through websites? Or are you more of a social media person, online, YouTube, that type of thing? 902-405-6000, that or whatever else you want to get into, folks. You can get into whatever you'd like to. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Let's kick it off with Darren. Hello, Darren.
Hi. How you doing?
I'm well, you?
Not bad. I just wanted to comment on the last caller of the day yesterday.
Okay.
He kind of responded to what I'd said. And he said that Carney didn't do anything in 2008 and that it was all Harper and Flaherty, and that Carney was just responding to the subprime housing crisis south of the border. And that I 100% agree with. Carney knew that the USA was going to crash and pull the rest of the world down with it, which is exactly what happened. But Canada's banks were safe. They're the highest, strongest rated banks in the world for 6 years in a row at the time. Mm-hmm. But our economy would have suffered while Harper was sitting on his hands had Carney not cut interest rates from 4% to 3.5% on March 4th, 2008, to 3% on April 22nd, to 2.5% on October 8th, 2.25% on October 21st, and 1.5% on December 5th, while government was prorogued. Every other G7 country made their very first interest rate cut in October of that year. None of them had the foresight that Carney had. World-renowned economists credit him with handling this crisis. That's why the UK recruited him and begged him to become the first non-Brit to lead the Bank of England in over 300 years. And after that stint at Bank of Canada, Harper offered Carney the role of finance minister to replace Flaherty, but he declined and went to England instead. Mm-hmm. So people say England's warning about us. That's only Liz Truss. She's a 49-day prime minister who didn't last as long as a head of lettuce because her big plans for the economy were to cut taxes for the 1%, and she was immediately ousted. So don't believe when people say the UK is warning us. And lastly, I'd like to compare their education. Poilievre dropped out of university and became an MP at the age of 23, and he finally completed his undergraduate degree in international relations at the age of 29. When he was young, he entered a speech contest sponsored by Magna International and won $10,000. The topic of the speech was calling for a 2-term limit for MPs. He's since gone on to spend 20 years in Parliament, 75% of his adult life, without a single piece of legislation to his name. Carney, on the other hand, got a full scholarship to Harvard, where he got his undergraduate degree in economics, then his master's and PhD in Oxford. He did all this by the age of 30. Well, it took Poilievre till the age of 29 to finally complete his undergraduate degree through correspondence. And yesterday you were talking about what the Bank of Canada does. The Bank of Canada sets monetary policy. The finance minister sets the budget and fiscal policy.
Yeah, I know that.
Flaherty and Harper didn't do anything until January 26, 2009. That's when they brought in a $40 billion stimulus package because they were going to be brought down by the other parties.
Okay, so it sounds to me like your mind is made up. You're firmly in Carney camp.
Oh, yes. There's no question.
Yeah.
Anybody in their right mind would never pass up this opportunity to. We've got a candidate that checks every box.
Well, Darren, one of the pushbacks that I think are legitimate is that Carney has had his fingerprints on the Trudeau Liberals. I mean, he was a trusted advisor at the very least for a period of time, and it could be as much as 5 years. And we don't know how much Trudeau listened to Carney. But he certainly.
What happened over those last 5 years? It was all the pandemic.
Well, no, that's not true. It's not all the pandemic. We had immigration levels, which the government, if they had their eye on the ball, could have. Pardon me.
He opened up immigration too fast, too soon after the pandemic.
That's right.
We had years of very low immigration, and they were trying to make up for it. And a lot of tradesmen, a lot of retired people, a lot of people near retirement retired at that time, and it. Yeah, it was too much too fast. I agree with that. Nobody's perfect.
Well,
I don't think Carney was advising on immigration.
Okay. How about housing and affordability? That spiraled out of control.
They didn't keep up with it.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Well, those are pretty big issues, don't you think?
Pardon me? Yes,
those are pretty big issues.
And Carney's addressing them.
Okay, but when you're supporting the Liberals, you're not just supporting Carney, you're supporting you're validating 9 years of what the Liberals have done.
No, I'm not. I can criticize some things that they've done and still support them.
Well, okay, if you want to dismiss all of that, that's fine.
I'm not dismissing it. I agree there was mistakes made. That doesn't mean that he's a way better option than Poilievre, who's a big crypto guy worth $25 million and can't get a security clearance.
Well, okay, the security clearance you say he can't get, he's refused to get, and that's up for another discussion, so that's fine.
Well, why would you refuse when you're the leader of the opposition? Everybody else has it.
Well, because he says that it would muzzle him if you've heard all this before anyway, Darren. You're well-versed. You know all this. So anyway, listen, I think you make some legitimate points, and you're obviously well thought out, and I appreciate your opinion. Thank you so much.
One last thing before you go,
sure.
If it's all right.
Yeah, sure.
Everybody blames inflation on the carbon tax.
Yeah.
Every other developed country experienced even higher levels of inflation than Canada did. Was it our carbon tax that affected other countries, or was it the pandemic and the lingering effects of it?
Yeah. Well, listen, I agree that the pandemic was obviously a huge contributing factor to all of this stuff, and it can't be dismissed. That all said, though, I think the runaway spending by the Liberal government was out of control, and in hindsight's a beautiful thing, but the way in which the money was spent was ridiculous, even in a time of pandemic, Darren, in my opinion.
Yeah, but it had to be rolled out fast because of the emergency situation, and people took advantage of it, which they shouldn't have. Yeah. That's on them.
Okay, Darren, thanks for the call, pal. Appreciate your comments. Take care. 902-405-6000, that's the way to reach us. Obviously, there's a Carney supporter, and that's fine. That's what it's about. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Todd. It's Friday.
I know, eh?
In regards to your last caller, if you don't mind, I'm just going to review some of this. And I think immigration openly admitted Trudeau, who was a drama teacher, by the way.
Yeah.
So as far as education goes, I mean, really. Having said that, I think, the immigration, Trudeau and his immigration minister both admitted they made a mistake.
Yeah.
a big mistake. It was a big mistake, and it's one of the reasons why we have a housing and rental crisis. I'm not blaming it totally on them. But to me, if you were content with the last 10 years of what we've had, I think most people here, and don't take Trump out of the equation because he just sort of entered 3 months ago. Mm-hmm. Our country has been in a crisis, as has England, by the way. Carney is a mess. And they, too, were also on the brink. They made some terrible mistakes, the European Union, on immigration. And you can see it's people are getting rather antsy with what's going on around the world situation. So as far as Carney go, he's definitely a globalist. Trudeau's definitely a globalist. And it depends what you want.
Is that necessarily, Dave? Let me ask you that: is that necessarily a bad thing to be a globalist? To look, that's what free trade's all about, is it not? It's global.
I think there is a risk that we could go European Union, and I think if European Union, because we're desperate, right, as a nation here, and I think we're scrambling. And it's very feasible if we don't get our thoughts together here, because we're panicking about the 51st state thingy. Yeah. The European Union is in very bad shape itself. So, we have to sort of figure out what we want to do here. But I cannot, in my right mind, vote Liberal again, because it seems like it's the same band of misfits for the most part. And excuse that. That's not probably my wording I should be using here. But there hasn't been much change in his cabinet. He's shrunk it down a little bit. Yeah. And I just can't, and he's got a lot of investment in New York. And I don't belittle people. If Trudeau walks away with $8 million pension, I don't belittle that. That's politics. Good on you, But I just cannot see myself voting for Liberal again. I just can't. And I did a vote for them the first time around. I really did. Gave them a shot. And also what I wanted to bring up is another blunder on our politicians here in Canada. I don't know if I haven't been in near the radio. I've been quite busy doing other things, but sorry, Todd, but I tried to get the podcast later, but I ran out of steam. Have you talked about the Chinese executing 4 Canadians at all?
I haven't covered it, but I want to. I've reached out to Dave Perry. It's shocking. It is indeed. Yes, it is.
And they were executed on apparently drug crimes, alleged. And we have to take, they run their country differently than we do or anywhere else. And drugs are, if that's the case. But these are Canadian citizens that we heard nothing about. They were executed, I gather, months ago, and the story's just coming out now. And I'm thinking, where's our government? Where's our leadership, for God's sakes? And here's another thing that I worry about. If we're going to separate ourselves from the United States, right, which, yes, wrong or right, we have there's U.S. embassies by far in number around the world. So if you're a world traveler, if there's no Canadian embassy, we don't have Canadian embassies as much as American, we better be careful, because if you need help somewhere, the next best thing is American embassies used to help Canadians. So, if we're going to have this great divide that we're creating, and we are.
How are we creating the great divide? Is Trump's creating the divide?
Well, we are retaliating, of course. So what I'm saying is the divide, you have to be careful what we're doing here to our neighbors to the south, as is Trump. I know we're all angry. We're all upset. And we're in a dither. We got can I say this? Panties in a knot. There's no doubt about it. But we have to tread carefully, because we're going to hurt ourselves along the way. Either way, we need some leadership to direct the ship and get the ship in the right direction. Carney does not have my vote. I'm sorry, he does not have my vote. But I'll go PP Polyev for sure.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely, all the way.
Thanks, Dave.
Cheers, Todd.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Look, if you're traveling abroad at this point, folks, in places like China, you are taking a big gamble, in my opinion, because. Do you think that the consular affairs in Canada is going to have any sway over what China does? I would say zero, absolutely zero. And I'm not fear mongering here. I'm just saying, if you're traveling abroad, you are extremely vulnerable to whatever the authorities in that country can do to you. And the idea that Canada is going to somehow come to your rescue, or the Canadian consul, I'm dubious at best that it would be the case. I would hope that it would be, and perhaps at one point it would have been, but now. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls. So to reach us, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Hello, Bill.
How you doing?
I'm well. You? How are you, my friend?
Well, we're hanging in, Todd. We're hanging in. There's a lot on the plate. You're awful busy doing a lot of other things. But anyway, I come alive once in a while for your show, naturally. Anyway, you're doing a good job. You're hanging in.
Thank you, sir.
Two quickie things. It won't be too belabored. First of all, the thing that bothers me is you vote members in Parliament, and then you have the boss man, we'll say Trudeau or whoever, Harper. But it almost seems like it's a one-man thing where they come up, if there's something coming up to want to vote in or get in or whatever. See, I don't know how much voting or control the rest of the people of members of Parliament have. So my thing is this: anything important that's brought up, let's hope it's just not a one-person thing. Whoever's in charge, it's passed. It should be voted on by members of Parliament, and a secret vote too, so that the boss person isn't going to be hold us against you. I mean, it seems like it's a lot of this one-person thing around the world, running the countries. Now, I don't know if I'm up, but I mean, if whatever it is, whether it's carbon tax, if Trudeau decides we want that, does he put it to a vote with the rest of the members of Parliament or not? What do you think?
Well, sure. Yeah, I think there's a concern about how much input MPs and MLAs have when it comes to governing. I don't think very much. I think that once somebody has a cabinet and in particular if they've got a majority government, they rule kind of unilaterally without a whole lot of input. And I think you raise a legitimate point, Bill. I don't think that backbenchers, to use that term, have much say at all, if any, unfortunately.
Yeah, it all seems to be Trudeau, or whoever's in, Harper, so on. So that's my thoughts on that one. Now, the other one I read, believe it or not, I still get the newspapers. There's nothing in it. I don't know why I'm getting it, but I do get it in the morning. It's at my doorstep, and I read it. And, of course, today we're into this fishing rights again. And, I guess, I don't know. I mean, I have a friend, I think he's Mi'kmaq. I never did get into it with him, but I, not too long ago, had the Marshall report, judge saying, I had the two 16-millimeter reels on that and loaned it to a chief. I don't know where it went to. I'm looking for it back. But anyway, so I'm sympathetic to a certain point. But the thing is, we seem to be having this problem of treaty rights and who can do what and who can't. According to the Marshall report, I know that carries right through how far, but it's basically saying it's for sort of home consumption, and that's it. Now, I don't understand this thing about all of a sudden after all these years, I don't know, when was the treaty? Way back in 1700s or something?
Well, the Marshall decision was, I think, around 2000 or 99.
No, I'm talking about the original treaty, ended the wars and all that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the history is with the actual treaty, but the Supreme Court Marshall decision ruling was the most recent piece of legislation, or most recent court ruling that is at play. So that's not that old. That was, again, 25, 30 years ago now.
Well, that was pretty simple as far as I could see. It was sort of a home consumption thing. Now we have basically they pretty well got the fishing thing there from Clearwater and all that stuff, sending it to China. And then now suddenly all rivers, according to the treaty way they're talking, is under their thing. They can do what they want.
That's true.
There's something. Well, how come all of a sudden all these years since it should be going by the original treaty? If it's a problem, they should review it and maybe bring it back up for discussion and put a new treaty or do something, because what all it's doing is alienating the regular fishermen and all those involved, and no control really by the regular government here. So it's kind of a mess.
It's an absolute. No, you're right, Bill. It's an absolute mess. The whole thing is very problematic when it comes to overfishing or whatever. Because you're right, Mi'kmaq and not all, but some Indigenous, they don't recognize the Supreme Court decision or the old treaty.
Or
that's right. So
That's what
if
they should be going by.
well, but again, if they feel as though that they're not legitimate, if those treaties and those court rulings they don't legitimize them, then there we are. So it's a very complex issue for sure, Bill. Thanks for the call, pal. Glad to hear your voice.
Good man.
All right, take care, pal. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back.
Facts.
Continuing with your calls, the way to reach us 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Just like that. Hello, Don.
Good morning, sir. How you doing?
I'm well. You?
I got that flu. I got a couple people I know. Anyway, I want to tell you something. Have you ever done the legislature lately, or any time?
Have I what?
Listen to the legislature on TV. I mean,
no.
On TV.
No, I have not.
Oh, it's like not the Gong Show. There's so much going on down there you wouldn't believe it. The questions that the opposition and so much. But the big thing is, you're not supposed to drive and text and email, right? They do it. They get the cell phones in their hands. They got even laptops, and some of them down there should have an IQ. Some MLA should have an IQ test to run, because some of them don't know what they're talking about. Really, all in three parties. All three parties have some in there. They don't know how to address or ask a question. Mumble jumble, and I'm serious. I turn it off sometimes. But the way they go on down there, they're nitpicking questions, wasting time. But when I see them down there, I don't know, maybe the speaker's sort of control what you do. But they use your cell phone for texting. You're in the house, look presentable, look in the classroom, kindergarten, act better than them. You know, that's it. But what I'm trying to say to you is, leave the phone in your pocket, or if in the committee of the whole, it could be different, or in a session that you're in, a minister's asked questions in the committee of the whole, we call it. But if you're in the legislature, you're listening to the person, answering directly, and put the cell phone down, and stop. If you want to do your hair up, go up to the bathroom. All right, don't keep on curling your hair. Look presentable. I'm serious, Todd. You're elected as a representative for the people, right? And act presentable, and get away from the stupid questions. I sat there one day. I think it was 25 minutes, and the person asked the minister, I think, the same question 3 times again. Mm-hmm. They wasted about 25 minutes on almost all the same stupid questions. Yeah. And they're not getting over it, really. I mean, it doesn't matter if ours or not. There's other ones, too, I watch sometimes. But, I mean, still, it's something like, and then they say we should act like, and then, I'll tell you, they were saying something about Paul Yett yesterday, blaming him for a lot of things, one of the MLAs. I don't want to really mention his name, but some of the things will say. It's so, they should have, seriously, Todd, they confuse you.
Okay, Don.
I mean, you know what I'm talking about, Todd, really.
I hear you, pal.
All right,
thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000, that's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Mike, hello.
How are you today?
I'm well, you?
Good. I agree with some of your callers there about not voting for Liberals, and this is my reason, is they're not extending the pipeline to the Atlantic Canada, and also the carbon tax. Yes, they're stopping at the fuel pumps, but it's going to be added on to the cost of people who are manufacture stuff and all that. So we get a relief from the fuel pumps, but we're going to get hit at the end of the month of April on the manufacture. So cost of goods and everything is going to go up again. So it's like they're misinterpreting. They're not letting us know everything that they're supposed to should tell us. I just don't trust them, and it's time for a new government.
Okay, why do you say that the Liberals are opposing a pipeline?
Well, they announced on the leadership with Chrétien right to Quebec, and that's what they stopped. That's what's going to stop you.
Yeah, well, that's because that's Quebec that is dug their heels in. That's not the federal Liberals.
So, yeah, but Atlantic Canada, we're not going to get it. It's going to stop right there.
Well, but again, is that the Liberals' fault if that's the case, or is that Quebec's fault?
Well, I thought we were all united. Right?
Well, tell Quebec that, right?
Well, this is the feds that are announcing at the Liberal Party, right? So, we should get that pipeline going right to Atlantic Canada, right to St. John's, because we need their relief too of gas and oil and all that.
Yeah. But from what I can gather outwardly, I think that Mark Carney and the Liberals are certainly. I'll mention Mark Carney. I think he's supporting more pipelines. As a matter of fact, I'm reading something now off a website from Mark Carney. Says Canada needs to build more oil pipelines to reduce its dependence on foreign supplies while opening up new trade corridors for exports. Mark Carney says recently. Yeah. He said it's about getting things done. It's about getting pipelines built across this country so that we can displace imports of foreign oil. So that contradicts what you just said, does it not?
No, he said Chrétien said the pipeline is going to go to Quebec, and that's where it's going
Why do you make Chrétien? We're talking about Carney. Why the hell are you mentioning Chrétien?
Because that was his leadership of the Liberal Party that announced Carney to take over. All right, and that was said his own word was going to stop there in Quebec City.
Well, that's not what Mark Carney said.
Well, someone's not saying something, right? So, in my view, they're not going to continue east at all to Atlantic Canada. So.
Okay, thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Again, that's not what I've heard or read. I'm looking at a quote right now from Mark Carney. Recently, he made comments. Now, some of you out there will say you can't trust him. He'll change his tune once elected. And look, I guess you can have that point of view. And have politicians promise things during campaigns and not deliver once elected? Absolutely, that's the case. That's happened, and that happens, and will continue to happen. But to my knowledge, to this point, Mark Carney, outwardly anyway, supporting pipelines, including the Energy East pipeline. Whether Quebec would allow it or not, that's another thing. 902-405-6000. Give us a call, folks. Give us a buzz. Len, hello.
Good morning there, Todd.
Hi.
You can hear me?
Yeah, I got you. Go ahead.
Todd, the only reason I'm going to vote Conservative this time, and I was on the fence for quite a while, and I don't like these commercials or these campaigns that both people are doing, but the only reason I was going to vote for Conservative is because he was the guy that was going to take the carbon tax off of it for us, and we were all very happy about that. And now the Liberals jump on the wagon in order to get votes. Well, that's not fair. If they got to come up with some of their own agenda to tell me why I should vote Liberal again. And so my policy is the same people are with Carney that were with Trudeau. The same people are with him. And they were all in back of Trudeau, what he was doing. So my method is that the Liberal government had been in a long time, over 10 years, and that's too long, because once a party is in that long, they take control and are able to do whatever they want. And so I'm willing now to give the Conservatives a chance to see what they'll do. And I'll wait to listen to your opinion.
Well, look,
have a good day.
Okay, all right, take care. Listen, that's obviously some people will feel that way. They look at Mark Carney, they say, okay, change the leader, you still have the same party. And by voting for the Liberals, you're validating what they've done for the past 10 years under Justin Trudeau, and validating all the policies that have led to a lot of the issues and challenges that Canada faces, including out of control immigration. And a lot of these things, of course, are tied in with the pandemic. We know that. Inflation. Now, the Conservatives would suggest that inflation is all pinned on the carbon tax, which, of course, that is not true. Some of it would be, but it's pandemic spending and creating money and deficit spending. That was largely what led to all the inflation, all the CERB payments. You infuse all that money, billions and billions of dollars, into an economy, it'll manifest itself into inflation. Now, the argument could be made, and has been made, or was made on the show earlier today, that the government needed to do that to respond to a pandemic, and that we weren't the only country that did that. Western countries did that en masse. The Liberals would tell you that despite all of that, we're best equipped compared to other G7 countries when it comes to debt ratio. Now, whether you believe that or not, that's another thing. But all things that are bad that happen to this country, the Conservatives would tell you were Justin Trudeau and the Liberals' fault and failed Liberal policies. Obviously, that's not true, but that spins well. And look, the Liberals wear some of it for sure. Absolutely, they do. And Len's absolutely right. You look at Carney's cabinet, the 23 or whatever member cabinet that he appointed last Friday. Almost every one of them were Liberal soldiers, loyal to Justin Trudeau, and had their fingerprints all over a lot of these failed policies. So we shall see what the electorate does on Election Day. 902-405-6000. Eric, hello.
Yeah, good morning, Todd. How are you?
I'm well, you?
Yeah, not too bad. Listen, I came across something that might shed a different light on these tariffs. Now, I'm only saying this as a matter of conversation, not to
sure
provoke a debate or anything like that.
Okay.
I'm not really into that. Here, the United States economic engine has an economy of $20 trillion a year, so it only makes sense that all the other countries in the world would like to get a piece of that pie because it's the predominant economic engine in the world. So what has happened over a period of time, all the countries in the world basically on average charge the United States 10 cents or 15 cents on the dollar to access their markets with goods. Well, the United States doesn't exactly do that. And as a result of that, they've created quite a deficit for themselves. For an example, with India, Mexico, and European Union, the United States has a $918 billion trade deficit. So I said that part of it. Secondly, Trump and his economic advisors are suggesting that they can eliminate federal income tax for people that make $150,000 a year or less by having what they call external revenue tax, which is the same with the European countries, and the rest of the world is charging them. So when you think of that, just think of how the economy in the United States would go. For an example, if you're making $50,000 a year, and you get $10,000 or $5,000 more dollars a year income tax free, that could really generate the economy, and it's a very good way to think. I believe, Todd, that all these this so-called tariff war is going to settle down, and it could open up a better era of free trade. But my view is that the United States is justified in lots of instances to go after this. The last thing I'll say, a lot has been made about Carney signing off on the carbon tax. Well, he can't do that. He can reduce the amount from, say, 8 cents a liter down to zero, but he hasn't eliminated the carbon tax or the mechanism by which they can apply it. That has to go through Parliament. He doesn't have the authority to do that. So already he's misspoken. And, if you look at net zero carbon, this is in Trudeau's era, this is on their website, that net zero carbon emissions would reduce the food production in Canada by 30%, and then they quickly took it down. So if you want to trust this guy who is a globalist, go right ahead.
Okay, that term Eric uses, globalist, is used in a negative connotation. What is a globalist? Can you define what a globalist is?
Yes, it's for having centralized power in the world. That's what it's about. So if you look at this, if you have central bank digital currency, think of the word central bank. That means it's under all the money in the world will be under government control.
Yeah, that to me is I just Googled globalist. Okay, now for what it's worth. A person who advocates the interpretation of planning of economic and foreign policy in relation to events and developments throughout the world. That's what it says. So to me, would you not want somebody who's in charge of your country to be in touch with what's going on in other foreign policy and other economies? And we don't want to be an isolationist government, do we? Where we just try and go it on our own and live on, and that's not the answer, is it?
Well, listen, I'll counter with this. The World Trade Organization, right, sets up free trade, okay, supposedly. Yeah. Everybody knows that it's under the influence of China for the most part. So let me give you an example of something. If we're selling wine in Nova Scotia at $15 a bottle, and Chile is bringing wine into our market at $12 a bottle, and we decide to stay to Chile, okay, you're going to have to charge $18 a bottle. The World Trade Organization, as it stands now, can say, no, that's an unfair trading practice. So we don't have control.
Well, how much clout does that organization actually have? I mean, Donald Trump is clearly defying NAFTA or our Kuzma deal, and they have absolutely no teeth whatsoever, Eric. That organization has zero teeth over what happens economically. What are they going to do?
Well, that's fine. I can't really argue with that because I don't have any facts.
Well, it's true. It's true. Donald Trump is defying our free trade agreement, which he ratified and signed. Right now, we have a free trade deal, and it means nothing. And what's the what's the WTO doing about it? Zero, nothing, zip.
Okay. What did I just say at the beginning?
I don't know. Can't remember.
Okay, the United States has a tremendous trading deficit, and with the rest of the world, because of the rest of the world charging tariffs of between 10 and 15% right now. You can look this up. So Trump is saying if we charge that 10 or 15% for countries wanting to access our $20 trillion economic machine, then they're going to have to pay an excess. To access it, they're going to have to pay what they're charging us. There's nothing illegitimate about that.
Well, Trump doesn't even understand how a tariff works, according to his own words. He doesn't even get how it works. So,
what I just said to you, did that just make sense? What I just said to you?
What I'm saying is that what Trump says about tariffs and all this pardon me?
Okay, Todd. I don't think you're answering my question.
What's your question?
My question is it not fair for the United States to charge other countries what they're being charged for themselves?
Because the information because the information that they give us that Trump spouts is inaccurate and not true. It's not true.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's right.
All right, I think you're wrong, Todd.
Okay, thanks for the call. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, 902-405-6000. Quick email from Mark, then back to the phones. Mark says, Canadians should wake up and understand that Mark Carney has had his influence on the Canadian economy throughout the Liberal Party for years. And look at what we have become. This will cause a rift between Alberta, which could and has every right to separate. Carney will parrot whatever makes him look good. Until after the election, he'll resort to his net zero and carbon tax foolishness. That will be disastrous. I do not trust him even for a little bit. That comes from Mark. And Mark, I will say this, that I agree that if in fact they form a majority government or minority or whatever form of government that Mark Carney, if that happens, and he starts going back to no pipelines and all that routine, contradicting what he is saying to get elected, Alberta, man, you will talk. You think that you ain't seen nothing yet when you want to talk about an angry province, and they'll stop at nothing at that point. The trust will really be broken after all of this, in my opinion. 902-405-6000. Brian, hello.
How you doing, sir?
I'm well, you?
Good, buddy.
Great.
Listen, thank God for some of the educated people that do get on your program, because I just shake my head, and it really pisses me off to listen to people that just ramble on about stuff that they just really don't understand. But anyway, getting to the points quickly. As far as Carney is concerned, I think he's the best choice. There's no question in my mind. The old saying goes, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression.
Sure.
Well, with Poilievre, his first impression is an attack dog, and that's not who I want on the world stage. He doesn't have that kind of prowess or, intellect to deal with people on the world stage. As to the carbon tax, the price just went up. The gas just went up 5 cents a liter. When it goes back down because of the reduction in April, people, the gas prices are based on market, right? So it's going to come up, it's going to come down. Like last year we were paying $1.70. This year we're paying $1.60, right? So it's really irrelevant in the bigger scheme of things, because when that price goes back down, it's only going to come back up again. So you're still going to be paying that kind of money. As to the industrial portion of it, that part only applies to certain industries that, have certain emissions. That doesn't apply to every manufacturing business and company, right? Because they're not using a lot of carbons to, create their products. So that's just like, you got to put it in perspective. So, when I hear this kind of stuff, it's like, God, people, get with the facts.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when it comes to Poilievre, I mean, he's poison. He's just not who you really want on there. And as far as the cabinet ministers that are still in Carney's, realm, he basically, he's the one that says, no, we can sit around a round table, we can discuss this stuff, but he's the guy that says, look, this is what we're going to do. So as far as having any kind of past Trudeau influence or whatever, this is on him, right? He's the guy that's going to make the decisions. He has his cabinets that advise, and he directs them, all that kind of thing. And just because he, was directing, Trudeau and his crew back then, that doesn't mean that they all took his advice.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? So,
and look, once he gets a mandate, he can pick his own cabinet, right? So
absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. He was kind of handed that cabinet. He didn't really have much of a choice, right? So.
Well, exactly. And they say, well, why is he over here doing this? He should be doing this and that. He's got a plan, and he's not going to bend the knee to Trump and run down there and kiss his butt. He's going to wait until he's good and ready, and he's got a plan. Right?
Okay, Brian. Okay, thanks for the call. Right. Appreciate it. Take care. Hey, Rick, saw you called, wanted to get you on. Go ahead, pal. But it'll be quick, but I wanted to get you on. Go ahead.
I'll do my best. Look, the Liberals are like an old house that somebody bought to flip it. And when they flipped the house, all they did was paint the exterior. And all of the problems that were in the house to begin with, the lack of insulation and the dry rot and infested with carpenter ants, and all that is hidden.
That's an interesting analogy.
The house, pardon me?
That's a good analogy.
Yeah, they paint the house and try to make it extra money on it and hide all of the stuff that was neglected over the years. And in my view, the Liberals are just like that. Carney is, the guy who painted the house.
Okay, pal. Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it. Take care. Thanks for the calls, everybody. We appreciate it very much. When we come back, a chat with Claudia Chender. We'll be back. Claudia Chender joins the show, leader of the NDP, leader of the official opposition here in Nova Scotia. Claudia, thanks for doing this. We appreciate your time, as always.
Nice to be here, as always, Todd.
All right, so where do we even start? I've got quite a list here, so why don't I just throw it over to you? What are some things that have happened in the Ledge recently that you want to raise attention to?
Well, I think the overriding theme of this session, as hopefully I think it's coming to a close, is that we've seen a legislative agenda from the government that was a complete surprise, number one.
Yep, that's
so none of the legislation that's been put forward was discussed on the campaign trail, nor did we have any inclination that it was coming before they took out their infamous $10,000 ad on the front page of the paper talking about resource extraction. And I would say that all of it shares as a common feature an attempt to really consolidate control on behalf of the government and, in my opinion, to weaken the democratic process. And certainly in the opinion of the dozens of Nova Scotians who have come and been at the public bills hearings, have rallied around Province House, and have certainly been giving politicians of all stripes an earful. So, that's what we're seeing. We're certainly doing our best to debate, to bring those voices in the House. We're seeing the government, as they are wont to do when public pressure becomes strong enough, backtrack on some of the worst parts. But they are moving ahead with some that are really troubling.
Okay. Well, what are some of the more troubling ones that you'd like to address?
Well, one, of course, the thing that has gotten the most attention is their Bill 1. And as I said last night, they've got a bad track record with Bill 1s. Their first Bill 1 was fixed election dates, which they're repealing. Mm-hmm. And their new Bill 1 was an attempt to be able to fire the Auditor General without cause, change the FOIPOP regime, and to dismiss civil servants without cause, senior civil servants, and potentially with less protections than the Labor Standard Code would afford. And that provision is going ahead. So they have amended the Auditor General provisions after a huge outcry and a brave stance taken by the Auditor General herself. They have amended the FOIPOP provisions for similar reasons. However, we are still in a situation where they are really substantially weakening worker protections for the folks who make our government run. And they're doing that, very clearly in the legislation, notwithstanding the Nova Scotia Labor Code. So, if you work in food service or you work in construction or you work in any other sector and you've got seniority, you've got a lot better protection than you do if you're a public servant right now.
Yeah, and using the term problem solvers, problem stretchers, whatever type of terminology like that's kind of, who makes that decision, who's a problem solver and who's a does that mean if you do something that perhaps contradicts what the government of the day thinks, then you're a problem? Is that the line or what?
I mean, certainly that's how I interpret it. Yeah. I seem to be problem stretcher number one, Todd. Yeah. And what I do is go into the legislature every day and try to voice the concerns of Nova Scotians, of professionals, of experts, of everyday people who have issues with the legislation being brought forward. But you raise a really good point, which is that essentially this bill, this provision around civil servants is only one of the places where there has really been a shadow cast over the public service. We have an independent public service. These are the experts that governments and ministers rely on to give them good advice. Mm-hmm. And if that advice is not what they want to hear, based on the letter that the Premier sent them, the letter that the Deputy sent them, and now this legislation, I think it's very clear that they will be seen as a problem stretcher. Yeah. And that's a problem because we need those folks to be able to speak truth to power. And, it's within the minister's purview to ignore that, but they need to have the best information. And if you have a situation where public servants are scared to give the best information because it might cost them their job, we're on a slippery slope here, I tell you.
Yeah, and how else would you feel if you were in that position? If you made it to the management ranks in the public sector and you're no longer protected by the union, and you were affecting and you were working with the government of the day, how else would you feel? I mean, there's no other way. Totally. I would feel that way, right?
Yeah, and it's not only the public service. I mean, we see similar provisions in the universities bill. Right. So we see the minister giving himself the power to determine the research objectives of Research Nova Scotia. Research Nova Scotia, a lot of people don't know about it. It's not a huge organization. It's not like the federal research organizations, but it's governed by an independent board, mostly university presidents and researchers, some bureaucrats, and they choose independent research aims based on bettering the province. And now the minister thinks that he can make those decisions better. And I'll tell you right now, no minister can, because they're not the expert. And so if we start to constrain all of the decisions and even the opinions and the research and the advice that government is getting to fit whatever their narrow interest is on any given day, and again, this is a surprise agenda, it really is to the detriment of the people of Nova Scotia because we don't know what tomorrow looks like. And so we need to be, building the most robust province that we can and making the best decisions that we can to do that.
All right, and on the university and that bill threatening, which threatens academic freedoms, might there be an argument that would say, look, publicly funded to a degree, although some say that it should be much more publicly funded than the 35 or whatever percent it is, but should there not be some say over with government input over what curriculum is delivered in order to meet the labor demands of the day? moving forward, in particular healthcare or whatever it might be? Is there some validity to that argument at all, or no?
I think that the valid argument around this legislation comes from the Auditor General, which is that the government deserves accountability for the taxpayer money it spends to support post-secondary institutions. Mm-hmm. And we have no problem with that. I think that's absolutely true. And certainly in the case of our community colleges, like NSCC, they are designed to meet the needs of the labor force. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to universities, the universities are best positioned to understand what programs we need. And I'll give you two examples. So 2 programs that have been cut really recently. At Dalhousie, they cut Canadian Studies. Yeah. At NSCC, they just cut the music business program. Now, those aren't healthcare, those aren't construction, but I think we need some Canadian Studies scholars right about now. I think we need to understand what it means to be Canadian. I think we need to understand the history of our economy and of trade so that we can deal with the threats that we have right now. And I think that, as we're spending $70 million on the Nova Scotia film industry this year, right, we need to recognize that many of the people who work in that industry came up through the creative arts at the Nova Scotia Community College, and that maybe they weren't marketing that program well enough. Mm-hmm. But administrators are so constrained that they have to look at everything and say, is it healthcare? Is it housing? Is it, whatever the government, is it mining, I guess now? Mm. But those are short-term, and universities aren't short-term institutions. Mm. They're long-term institutions, and they're economic drivers, right? Think of all the people we bring to this province. Think about the permanent professors and everyone who teaches and the scholars, but also the students. They are economic drivers. And if we start to constrain those programs, we are also going to lose students. And we are going to lose money. So I actually don't think there's a role for the government in determining what the academic curriculum of universities is, because I think we have a long-standing belief and understanding that the institutions are the ones that are best placed to do that. But as they do that, they have to be fiscally responsible. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we need to account for our money. But I'll tell you, Todd, part of the criticism around the lack of accounting for that money should fall firmly at the feet of the government themselves. They have spent a lot of time in the last few years cutting checks to institutions and companies and all kinds of folks without the proper controls attached, without asking for the reporting and the kind of value for money information that they should be. So we need to tighten up around that, no question. It's public money. But when it comes to curriculum and what could be taught, I firmly believe the government needs to lay their hands off of that one.
All right, and on things like this interprovincial trade bill and the lack of consultation, I think that suddenly they roll this type of legislation out, and then they start hearing from people like doctors and veterinarians and others and engineers and a large swath of people that say, look, these are the ramifications that will be a part of this, and I think it speaks to a lack of consultation, which is becoming too common here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I want to start by saying something that's really important, which is that this government is terrible at legislating. And so the premier is using this line a lot where he says, this is how the process works. Mm-hmm. We put something forward, we have feedback, we change it. Actually, that he's abusing that process because he has amended almost every bill. I should say that we just amended the interprovincial trade bill, and those amendments did respond to a lot of the concerns, not all, but a lot of the concerns brought forward by regulatory bodies. But think about the waste of energy and effort that went into that, right? You put forward a bill, then all of these experts have to scramble, usually with 24 hours notice, to put together a presentation and figure out how to get on the agenda at public accounts. They have to clear their schedules. They have to come and plead with the government. They have to make cogent arguments. They can't bring amendments anymore. And then they have to hope that the government listens. When, in this case, the government could have made a few phone calls and just drafted a piece of legislation that actually made sense. And just so your listeners are clear, this interprovincial mobility bill purported to drop all of the barriers around labor mobility. So if you're a teacher in Saskatchewan, you can be a teacher in Nova Scotia. If you're a plumber in Alberta, you can be a plumber in New Brunswick. All of that makes a ton of sense. But there are a lot of professions, and, two of them were like social work or law, where they're regulated to protect the public. So, based on the way the bill was written, you would have professionals operating here who are essentially unregulated, because if they got into trouble here, there would be no body overseeing them. Now, that's been fixed, but that's a pretty sloppy mistake. And that's a mistake that could have been pointed out if literally they had had a conversation with any regulated profession in Nova Scotia. And they know who they are. They have conversations with them. They're at tables with them. So, we have spent a lot of this session just urging this government to do their job. Reach out to stakeholders before you introduce a piece of legislation and make sure there aren't unintended consequences. And for some reason, they seem very unwilling to do that.
Okay, and we're really tight on time, but back to your point, what about the lack of any of this during the campaign and the radio silence on healthcare, on affordability, on homelessness, on all of these issues that are right here in our face and here and now are radio silence?
Yeah, and it's really concerning. I mean, the one thing we've seen in the legislation around healthcare was that they're going to stop publishing the emergency room accountability report.
Yeah, there you go.
And we know that this weekend there's 5 rural emergency rooms that are going to be closed. So we need a lot more action on that, and we are going to keep pushing for it.
Okay, Claudia, appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Todd.
All right, take care. Claudia Chender, leader of the NDP and leader of the official opposition. A chat with Geoff Irvine with the Lobster Council when we come back. All right, Geoff Irvine joins the show, Executive Director of the Lobster Council of Canada. Jeff, thanks so much. We appreciate your valuable time.
Anytime, Todd.
All right, so Nova Scotia Fisheries Minister Kent Smith downplaying the potential short-term effects of a 25% tariff on seafood products scheduled to be imposed by China on Thursday, and quite upbeat coming back from a seafood expo in Boston, saying there's lots of things to be positive about. Do you share the optimism?
Well, definitely when you go to a seafood show like that, there's lots of optimism because people are there to buy seafood and people are there to sell seafood, and everybody's very positive. I totally agree with the minister. The key thing is that the demand is there, and I think that's what he was referring to. And I think he said he was cautiously optimistic because he certainly knows the challenge we're going to have around prices. That's really the issue here. I'm not terribly concerned that we're not going to sell the lobster that we need to sell. The challenge always is at what price.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So, what can you tell us about the price, and what are some concerns you're hearing from fishermen?
Well, it's concerns from the whole value chain and fishermen, absolutely. Well, the challenge is this 25% tariff. We as of yesterday, we have to add it to our prices, and the question is, will the market accept it? And that's in China, and I don't have the answer to that yet. Let's wait and see. The other thing about China today is that we don't have a lot of lobster in stock, so we're not offering much until the new spring season start to kick in. And with the U.S. tariffs, the threat of them are enough to make the market sort of react to them because we never know if they're going to come in or not. So there's a lot of wait and see at the moment. The spring seasons start to open around the 19th of April. Quebec will open, Newfoundland will open, the Eastern Shore will open, the whole Gulf will open by the sort of middle of May, Cape Breton. So that's when we will see what this all means.
Yeah, we know that people in the industry are resilient by nature, and you have to be in order to survive in this industry. But I would think that these must be the most troubling times or uncertain times in many people's lifetimes in this industry. Is that an exaggeration, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you're right. As I reflect on the last sort of 30 years, we've had all kinds of big ups and downs, but this would be right up there. I would agree. The business has never been as complicated as it is today. We've got market access challenges. We've got market issues. We've got costs for bait and fuel and insurance, and everything is through the roof for everybody. So yes, I would say that this is some of the most complicated times, and with extra costs for everything. That just means that you need to have a much bigger credit line. You need to borrow a lot more money.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot more exposure. If you're a harvester, if you're a plant, if you're a shipper, everybody is on edge because the margins are thin at the best of times. And when you have this much financial exposure, it's very worrisome.
All right. So diversifying markets, can we get that done? Is that going to solve at least some of the challenges? And obviously that doesn't happen overnight. I've read the Philippines might be a possible market to diversify. What can you tell us with the diversification of markets and where and the timeline that might take?
Well, there's lots going on, but it all takes time. We're never going to replace a China or a U.S. Overnight at all. But there are some green shoots. We sponsored an event in Saudi Arabia a few weeks ago. We had a delegation here from the Philippines. I took them around yesterday a little bit, then they went to Cape Breton, and that was a lead, or that was a relationship that was developed last year in February when we took a group to Asia. So yes, there are lots of opportunities, but again, we've got our two biggest markets represent about 85% of our export value. We'll make some progress in other markets, but we're never going to replace the U.S. and China.
Right. Okay, Geoff, appreciate it. As always, thanks, and we'll do it again.
Anytime, Todd. Thanks.
All right, take care. You got it. Geoff Irvine, Executive Director, Lobster Council of Canada. In the next half hour, we'll chat with Allister Aalders. We're going to talk about a new Senior A Hockey League coming to Nova Scotia, and, of course, Sports with Cecil. All that when we come back. All right, it is Friday, of course, you all know that, and that means it's time to chat with our weather specialist, Allister Aalders. Allister, hello.
Hello, and happy Friday.
Happy Friday indeed, and spring has arrived.
It has. It's kind of looks like a very spring-like day out there, very gloomy, and but nice to have the mild temperatures. We've been, knock on wood, we've been treated pretty well this March so far.
Indeed. What are the average daytime highs for this time of the year?
So it's probably lower than maybe people think. It's, generally 4 or 5 degrees for around this time of year. The nighttime lows are on average still below freezing. So we have been, for the most part, warmer than normal. We've had, 8, 9, 10, even 11 degree temperatures in the city. So it's certainly been milder than normal for this time of year, although it is that time of year that when the winds blow in off the Atlantic like they did for most of the week and like they are today, you're stuck at 3 to 5 degrees along the coast. So it's you're more average or even a bit cooler than normal if you're in Peggy's Cove or Terrence Bay, but you get into the city and even out towards the airport and the temperatures can really come up. And I mean, parts of the province have even hit 20 degrees already. So farther inland where there's been more sunshine, you get the winds downsloping over the higher terrain and warming temperatures up. So it's we've enjoyed some nice weather. We've only had 3 centimeters of snow so far to date this March in Halifax. Wow. Not a lot.
Okay. This is probably a stupid question, but I ask stupid questions all day. So why?
No stupid questions.
There you go. What determines when spring hits?
So what determines when spring hits depends on, obviously, the equinoxes occur when the sun moves over the equator. So you get those direct rays along the equator, and obviously we get the 12 hours of daylight across all of the globe. So when those rays, the time that those rays are exactly hitting the equator determines what time the spring equinox or the vernal equinox, as it's also called, or the autumnal fall equinox. It depends on when those rays move directly over the equator. And usually that's, March 20th. Sometimes it can be March 21st. And I know a lot of people will say, oh, it always used to be, I think March 21st, or it sometimes can even be March 19th. It does vary. Generally, it's around, March 20th. And then for the summer, the rays are directly over, 23.5 degrees latitude north. So when those rays are over, it's more when those rays are passing at a specific time over those lines of latitude. That determines when the season begins. And for us, it was at 6:01 this past week.
And the longest day of the year is usually June
20th, 21st.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And we're heading in that direction now.
We're heading in that direction. It's nice to have the daylight out into the evening, especially on those brighter days. It's been really nice, and the mornings will catch back up eventually soon. And before we know it, we'll be enjoying those nice, long, and even warmer days. Can't wait.
Okay, absolutely. Don't underestimate early season wildfire risk. This is a story that was on our website this week. And from what we're hearing anecdotally, anyway, the lakes are quite low, eh?
I've heard from a lot of people that some who live on lakes or have a lake in their community, that the levels are near where they would be typically in June. So after, obviously, the winter snow melt in the spring, that it's already lower than it should be for this time of year. And I've heard from many people who, water for their wells has been an issue since late summer and fall, and they've even had to truck in well water through the winter because obviously we have had some snow, but a lot of that snow came in December. We had, a few decent snowfalls. We didn't have a lot of snow in January. We made up for it a bit in February, but we had more mixed weather events. We had some snow, but also a lot of ice and some rain mixing in too. And obviously when you have the ground frozen, it doesn't absorb the water easily. So especially with that snowpack. So we're running into issues where the water levels are already low, and they have been low since, last summer and last fall. Like this past fall, especially October, November was really dry. So we were in, a moderate drought for a period of time. It's still abnormally dry as of the end of February, and some inland locations are in a moderate drought still, but it's still an issue that's been ongoing really since, last summer and through the fall. And we really need to make up for the deficit to avoid problems to come, say, this later this spring and this summer, if we do experience, say, a dry summer.
Yeah.
And I don't like to say that every summer summer is traditionally our drier season. We get, the least amount of precipitation in the summer. I never like to say, oh, for sure it will be dry, because think back 2 summers ago where it was one of the wettest summers on record. It rained, pretty much all summer after we had a really dry spring. So you never know how things will shape out. But, we are at a stage where we do have a precipitation deficit that we need to make up for to, lift us out of these drought and abnormally dry conditions.
Yeah, but I mean, when you don't have that snow melt, and that's hard to replicate, right?
Obviously. It's very difficult. I mean, and it melted so early. There's no snow on the ground from what it's been so mild. There's no snow left on the ground, maybe in parking lots in those icy snowbanks. But given the fact that it's melted already in the ground, even when it melted was still partially frozen, it, wouldn't have absorbed all of that meltwater. So we're really going to be relying on, any late season snow that we get, and obviously more rainy systems to help lift us out of that deficit. And if we don't, there could be further issues down the line. I mean, even people not on wells, Lake Major was into that deficit last fall where water restrictions were in place for several thousand people in the Dartmouth area. So we don't want to get back into a situation like that. And if lake levels are already lower than they should be for this time of year, I mean, that's certainly a concern for, I'm sure, Halifax Water, but for all residents.
Right. What's the long-term forecast for the summer? Do we know?
The summer is still a little bit far out to determine what exactly we'll be dealing with. And obviously a lot of that will come down to, and I shouldn't say not all down to whether we're in like an El Nino or a La Nina or neutral, but we are, we had a very weak La Nina and we're trending, neutral towards an El Nino perhaps later this summer and into the fall. And we'll have to see how that influences precipitation and temperature patterns. We usually don't see a great effect in the summer from phases like that. It can lead to, certain trends with precipitation and temperature, but obviously its greater impact is on the hurricane season. So we'll be watching that. I mean, we did have some cooler than average temperatures this past, for parts of the winter. I would say we'll probably be trending, normal or even a bit warmer than normal as we go through the spring and the summer. Precipitation is really tricky because you can, technically you could get your normal amount of precipitation from one thunderstorm or just a couple of very brief showers that, might bring your normal rainfall, but if it's falling heavily, it's going to run off. So you do run into issues. That the outlook right now is generally for a near normal precipitation pattern as we go through the spring period towards the summer. So we will hope for that to help with the deficit. And then right now, early preliminary data shows near to above average temperatures for the summer.
All right. What's our weekend weather look like?
Not too bad. Few things to dodge. We have, some rain showers that will come in this afternoon and tonight. They will clear out tomorrow morning. There could be some flurries for parts of the province early tomorrow morning, but for the most part, it's a clearing trend on Saturday. Lots of sunshine in the afternoon. Sunday, we have a cold front, so the day starts off fair, and for the most of the day, it will be fair, but there could be some showers along the cold front Sunday afternoon, and that could mix over to flurries Sunday night, but temperatures are set to remain mild through most of the weekend. A cool down does come later in the day, Sunday behind that front and into Monday. Monday, we could be looking at a bit of snow mixing over to rain Monday night and into Tuesday, but warming back up.
Okay. And next week, so you mentioned long-term next week. We don't know yet, 7-day forecast?
The 7-day outlooks, there's pretty solid accuracy in 7-day forecasts. So we can, at least get a sense of the trend of how things are looking next week. And we are in a more active weather pattern. It's not necessarily resulting in, a lot of rainfall, because the rain that we're getting for the weekend is for today and into tomorrow is only about 5 to 10 millimeters. Some areas could get up to 15, and Cape Breton will get more, but for Halifax, generally 5 to 15. We have that system that will roll in Monday night and Tuesday with the wet weather, and then we do get a bit of a break behind that system. Nicer weather does build back in through Tuesday and Wednesday, but signs, for just some more weak disturbances as we go later next week. Nothing too, at least at this point, too significant on the horizon. But this time of year, things can change, so you always have to keep an eye on it.
Allister, always great. Appreciate it, my friend.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
All right, you as well. Allister Aalders, our weather specialist, Sports with Cecil, when we come back. All right, time to talk sports with our sports guru, Cecil Wright. Cecil, hello.
NCAA March Madness, baby.
Yeah, you're into it, eh?
Oh, yeah. Who isn't?
I'm not.
What?
Couldn't care less.
Oh, my goodness gracious. You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
I don't know. I just never get into it. Never, ever, for whatever reason, get into the March Madness thing. I don't know why.
Well, I'll tell you, I think it's the most unpredictable tournament, which I love that.
Yeah.
We already had one huge upset, McNeese State knocking off Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody would have thought of that. And now you're going to see Rick Pitino going up against John Calipari, and they hate each other. Oh, man, I can't wait for that game.
Do you participate in brackets? I'm sure you must, eh?
I used to, but I don't anymore because I usually get blown away like after the first weekend.
Yeah.
My teams always lose, and I get too upset and start throwing pencils at the wall and stuff.
Yeah. Do most college basketball players on the men's side anyway stick around for 4 years, or do I suppose if the NBA comes a call, and that's pretty tempting, eh?
Yeah, I think the majority of the players do stick around for 4 years and hopefully get their diploma. But when you're one of those guys like this Cooper Flagg young man who's going to be coming out of Duke after the show, I mean, it's kind of hard to turn down the offers that he's going to be getting.
Yeah. I think LeBron James and there have been a few. Kobe, I don't think went to university. Not many though.
No. Those two are exceptions to the rule for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know what? And I got to say this about LeBron James. I'm not his biggest fan, but I appreciate the fact that the guy's in his 40s and is still going out there and maintaining his body and able to do these high-level things in the sport that, only a handful of other people have been able to do. So I give him credit for his talent and ability.
Indeed.
I just don't like him.
Yeah, there you go. Why don't you like him?
Because he hurt my Celtics in the past when he was with Miami, when he was with Cleveland. Fortunately, we're getting him now that he's older, but, he's had a fantastic career. You can't take it from him.
Is his son competitive? How's his son doing?
let's just say that he's no LeBron. That's the best way to put it. I mean, it was a mistake. What LA did was they pleased LeBron by selecting this guy. I think it was in the second round they picked him.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a second-round talent. Like, there are a million basketball players out there who are better than his son.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not saying that he can't take me one-on-one. I'm not saying that. But come on, now the only reason why he got selected is because he's LeBron's son, and they wanted to hope that they could have them on the same floor, first time in history for a father and son playing together, and all that kind of stuff. That's it.
So it's not working out then. He's not even a journeyman player at this point.
No. He's not even a journeyman player in the G League, for crying out loud.
Wow.
He's had a couple decent games. I'm not saying he has absolutely no talent, but he's not an NBA talent. I'll take Lindell Wigginton over him any day of the week.
Wow. So without LeBron's name and notoriety, this kid would never have made the NBA. That's what you're saying?
You got it, Jack.
All right, 3 in a row. The Toronto Maple Leafs were the Stanley Cup parade is back on. What do you think?
I love when you guys win some games. Honest to God, I do, because that just makes the fall that's about to come in the playoffs so much sweeter.
Oh my gosh! Well, the Bruins won't be there, so that's one thing that we do know, right?
Yeah, that's true. I can't argue that point at all. They lost last night 4-0 to Vegas, and they're on their West Coast swing. And even with a good team, they never do good on that West Coast swing. So if they win a game, I'll be surprised.
Yeah. What are you seeing? What storylines are you seeing in the NHL right now that are grabbing your attention when it comes to who's hot, who's not, who's looking good? What are your thoughts?
I'm still silently hoping for Winnipeg, man. I think they've got a good team. It's a good story, and it's about time to see them excel in the playoffs. And they've got some decent players out there, and I got my fingers crossed for them. Now, having said that, I probably just gave them the kiss of death, and they'll probably lose their next 4 in a row or something. But I like Winnipeg, and I'm rooting for them.
Oh, Montreal, and Ottawa.
I said a while ago that I thought everybody was overlooking Ottawa, and they've got a nice, gritty young team, and they've got a Kachuk, so that means they're not going to be backing down from anybody. And sure as shooting, they've proven to be a difficult opponent for everybody. In Montreal, big surprise to me. I'm surprised that they've played as well as they have. They're not going to go anywhere, but they're setting themselves up pretty nice for the next couple of years. Yeah,
well, there you go. I mean, they've got a young team, and I think they're certainly heading in the right direction. But speaking of the playoffs, the Mooseheads have made the playoffs, which is good, right?
Yes. Yeah, and I said that if they made the playoffs, we should all be happy, regardless of the outcome, because I don't think that anybody expected after they made the series of trades that they made that they were going to make the playoffs. We expect them to have some difficulty, but surprise, they're in the playoffs, and who knows? Anything can happen.
Indeed. All right, looking at Major League Baseball, I suppose the regular season did kick off in Japan. What are your thoughts on the Dodgers playing and this tradition of playing in Japan? Do you like that or what?
Well, I think it's an opportunity for Major League Baseball to reap in some money. You send Ohtani over there, and now Yamamoto and Sasaki, and the Japanese fans are going to fill the place just to see those 3 players alone. So I think it's a smart move financially, but I don't like the fact that you're going to fly over there. 16 hours, let's say, to get there, and then they'll play a couple games. Then they come back to finish off spring training. I mean, you're going to finish off spring training. You already played 2 major league games. There are 2 games that count. So I don't know how I feel about that, really. I don't know.
Do you think? Well, I'm not a big fan. I'm like, it's like the NFL in Europe and stuff. I just don't see the point. They'll never expand into Europe. I don't really get it, but obviously it's about money, I suppose. But I get the whole idea of Ohtani being the stratosphere of stardom in which he's achieved, and that desire to have him play in front of his countrymen. I get that, I suppose. But
it was nice to see him hit a home run, though.
Yeah, that's right. Do you think that Ohtani will pitch this year at all?
I kind of hope not, and I can't see the need for him to pitch with all the other pitchers they got. The Dodgers, my goodness gracious. I'd like to see him take this year off from throwing the ball and then maybe see how his arm is next year, because I think it's the second year where you really find out, how healthy and how strong the pitcher's arm is. I wouldn't pitch him this year if I was him.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a young man anymore either, right? I mean, that needs to be considered.
Well, he's not as old as LeBron, but he's getting up there.
Yeah, that's right. And, of course, I don't really have much to say about Yankees with Garrett Cole. We already talked about that last week, so I'm not going to allow you to abuse me again on that one.
Well, you ought to be thankful for one reason.
Yeah.
That means that the Red Sox won't be smacking them all over the ballpark this year.
There you go. Anything local that you wanted to mention before I let you go?
Man, I got nothing going on right away, but I do want to mention that we're going to be having the Canadian U22 Men's Baseball Championship coming up in August, so everybody wants to attend that, see the best young players this country has to offer.
Okay, pal. We'll talk next week.
All right, buddy. Have a good one.
All right, take care. That's Cecil Wright, our sports guru. Thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate it very much. And have yourself a great weekend. I'd like to thank Vanessa Van Ness on the other side of the glass at the control board. Doing a fine job as always. We're back on Monday, 10 o'clock. See you then.